It's early this morning. Well, at least for me it's early. I woke up at 5:30 and left the house just after 6 to get here just after 7, and I'm in Den Helder today. As I've mentioned previously, on the Mondays and the Fridays I have a project I'm working on the island of Texel, so I have to travel to Den Helder first. And this goes through to the 1st of November. I was here last week using my Konica Autoreflex TC, and my apologies for in my previous video I wrongfully mentioned more than once that it is a Konica Automatic TC. And I have brought along my 40mm 1.8, not the 2.8, and also the 28mm 3.5 wide angle Hexanon lenses. Last week I was here also with the Konica Autoreflex, the second camera that I bought. The first one broke down on me. And then I shot through a roll of Kodak Ultramax 400, and I'll show you some of those results in this video. But anyway, I've talked enough for the introduction. Let's start making some photos, and I'll get back to you later in this video. Now that you've seen the photos which I took on the roll of Kodak color film, I thought I would shortly reflect on my experience using the Konica Autoreflex TC. But before I start, let me say thank you to Robbie Maynard Creates, an interesting YouTube channel all about photography. And I was one of the winners of his recent competition, and he sent me one of his original Polaroids, signed on the back. Thank you very much. And it is a photo of a semi-truck in a residential area, and it brings back some memories from back in the day when I used to live in the United States, and one of our neighbors was a truck driver, and in the weekend he would also park his truck next to his house. So it brings back some memories. Thank you very much. Right, let's get back to the Konica Autoreflex TC. After shooting through a few rolls of film, I have some experience that I would like to share with you. I bumped up against a few issues. First of all, to activate the light meter, the internal light meter, you slightly pull out the film advance lever so it protrudes out of the back of the camera. Once you press the button on the back, it clicks back into place. So when you're using the camera with the position it is in now, the film advance lever can easily snag on your clothing or your camera bag or anything else. So that's something you need to be aware of and be very careful with, because you could break the film advance lever. Another issue I bumped up against is the fact that in low light situations, and you'll be seeing that in the second part of this video when I show you the black and white photos I made on the Ilford Delta 400, I was indoors in a professional cycling track, taking photos using the internal light meter. and in such dark conditions it's almost impossible to see the metering of your light meter through the viewfinder. So that's been probably my biggest issue up till now. Very difficult to use the internal light meter in low light situations. The third point I would like to mention is the fact that the lens bayonet is very tight. Not something that I'm used to with Canon or Pentax. So it is quite difficult to put the lens back into place. Not a big issue, and just something that I bumped up against. So those are the three things that I would like to mention based on my field experience using this Konica Autoreflex TC. Before I show you the black and white photos, I would like to talk about the lens set that I have up till now for this camera. I have the 28mm 3.5, which I think is a very nice lens. Small in size, small in weight, very high contrast, and a very sharp lens. So that's a keeper, absolutely. I recently acquired the 40mm 1.8, and it's also a lens which I can really appreciate. It's small, it's lightweight, and it has a very nice angle of view. I have difficulties with compositions using a 50mm lens. I prefer the wide angle lens, but this is more or less middle ground, 40mm. I really appreciate this angle of view. Very nice lens, also a very nice contrast and very sharp. Then we get to the 50mm lens. I've used this in my previous video before the previous Autoreflex TC broke down on me. And you know, it's a nice lens, it's sharp, absolutely, and it has a nice contrast. Only a 50mm is just not my personal choice with regards to angle of view. Last but not least, I would like to talk about the 135mm 3.5. I mentioned quite a few videos ago that I had this lens lying around, only I did not have a Konica body to fit onto this lens. This was the reason for me to buy the Konica Autoreflex TC. This is a very average, I would call it a mediocre lens. It's not worth investing in. Of course, there's a 135 2.8 for which you pay a higher price, but it is going to be of much higher quality. I shot this lens open at 3.5 and I do not like the bokeh, as you can see in the results. And you know, even at infinity, I shot the photo of the boat in the far distance, it's just not sharp. And therefore, you know, I'm going to put this one aside and I'm going to look out for the 135 2.8. Something else that I would like to mention is the fact that over the past 2 weeks I've had very limited time to make photos. And I can see the time pressure I had reflected in the results that I was able to achieve. I'm not very happy with the exposure and also with the compositions of my photos. So it suffered a little bit under my daily working job. So that's something that I'm going to be needing to change in upcoming videos. To give you a small preview, I'm going to be using a Voigtlander Vito CSR, which is a beautiful little rangefinder Voigtlander. You know, I did a video on the Voigtlander Vito viewfinder, and here, lo and behold, I have a Vito CSR rangefinder. I took this camera with me from Hans de Graaf at the Fotovakhuis when I visited him yesterday in his store, and he received this from one of his customers together with a number of cameras as a sort of a gift. So I'm very keen on taking this camera out. I'm going to be shooting a roll of Kodak Portra 400, by the way, through this little Vito rangefinder. Very excited. Well, this concludes part 2 on using the Konica Autoreflex TC. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel. I would now like to show you the results that I achieved with the Autoreflex together with a roll of Ilford Delta 400. Thanks again, take care, and I'll see you next time.